Hello everyone. I am Gregory Contos and I welcome you to this crowdfunding webinar hosted by the Hellenic Branch of the International Social Service and Greek Ancestry. On August 29th, Greek Ancestry and the ISS Hellenic Branch inaugurated their collaboration to digitize the invaluable archival collection of the ISS. Covering the years from the 1950s up to 1985, our project aims at preserving the history of Greek children adopted by families abroad. In the adoption files, we're discovering amazing stories and incredible documents, letters written before mothers put the children up for adoption, letters from the adopting families, photos and drawings of children, newspaper articles, even airfare tickets. The goal of the ISS is to raise funds for the preservation of this archival collection and the advancement of ISS corresponding services, the search for an adoptee's biological family, as well as adoptee and biological family consultive support. Donations have already started coming in, and you're able to donate both during and after this webinar, either through PayPal or bank transfer. All the information you need can be found on ISS Greece website, in the YouTube comments thread, Greek Ancestry's and ISS Greece Facebook pages. Today, we are honored to have four very important guests who will talk about the significance of the ISS archive and its preservation. Very soon, we will hear what they have to say, but let's start with a brief introduction by Despina Economou, Director of the ISS Hellenic Branch. Despina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Greg. Good evening, everybody, if you are in Greece, and hello and good day if you are abroad. I will talk to you about the International Social Service, which is hosting you today. International Social Service Hellenic Branch is one of the oldest NGOs operating in Greece, and it is accredited as a charity organization by the state. ISS Greece was a founding member of a network that was established in Geneva in 1924, and in 2 years we are going to celebrate 100 years. And it was mainly established in order to cater for family issues that emanated from the fact that people had to live apart in different countries because of displacements during or after the wars. The ISS network has now approximately 140 members and representatives all over the world. The protection of children internationally is the main concern of the organization. Over the years, it has dealt with family issues of mixed couples and issues that had to do with abduction of children, custody, and also counseling of mixed inter-race and inter-country couples, because in the past, the Greek social workers were not very much they didn't know foreign languages that much, so ISS had this speciality of working with the social workers that were bilingual or trilingual. From the 50s, ISS was instrumental in inter-country adoptions and facilitated the adoption of the adoptions that were done from Greece to other countries. The purpose was to relieve the burden from the badly hit from the war's Greece and give a family environment to children that were growing in children's homes. Pedopolis was the name of the places, which if you know Greek, but I can also explain to you, Pedi is the name for child and polis is the name for city. So you can imagine Pedopolis, cities of children, how many children were in institutions. And also other orphanotrophia, orphanages. At the same time, people from countries that were not so much affected by the wars, such as USA, Canada, Australia, Netherlands, were offered to adopt children, either because they did not have their own, or because they wanted to enlarge their families, and often they were people of Greek origin. ISS at the time employed some of the best trained social workers to assist in the adoption process. I can confess that some of my professors in the School of Social Work had worked in this field, and now sometimes I can see their names under the social reports of the children to be adopted. Actually, two of my favorite teachers in professors in the School of Social Work, I have discovered that one was working, preparing the children from Greece, and the other was receiving the children in New York, I think, working for ISS USA. All the documentation of how an adoption starts and ends is treasured in the individual files we have in the office. Social reports, medical records, tickets, evaluations, suitability reports of prospective parents are all included in the files. The race with time is there because the paper, the material, the copies are decaying. You can imagine they are. We have pages that it is the 10th copy of a typewriter of those days. So you can imagine how sensitive the material it is. So the preservation with modern electronic methods is very much needed. This is the first reason we want to digitize our archive, the preservation. But also the babies and children of the 50s are fully grown ups now, and some of them do not have enough time for lengthy research. We all understand. The importance of searching for somebody's identity has been well documented by psychologists, psychiatrists, and other specialists. Secrets well kept in drawers can be detrimental for the mental health. At the same time, the revealing of the secrets can be medicinal and source of incredible joy. We've seen stories. So this is the second reason we want to digitize our archive, the facilitation of roots searching. Documents that had to do with procedures, professional methodology, values and practices, statistical information can also be retrieved from the archives. This is the third reason we want to digitize the archives. That is, to give the chance to researchers to draw useful conclusions about the context in which the massive adoptions took place. More will be explained by specialists like Gonda, who is going to talk later. Finally, our effort today has to do with increasing our capacity to utilize the archives by helping the adoptees who search for their roots, but not only with simple information, but also with the necessary counseling and support that such a soul-searching experience demands. To have the information, maybe you can see it, you know, get it through DNA tests, etc. But the support in this journey is absolutely necessary and cannot be done by technology only. You need the specialists who can be near you in order to go through this experience. And I'm sure Mary and Linda can tell us more about it. I want to assure you that Greece has established laws that safeguard the confidentiality and respect of personal information, and ISS is fully complying with the legislation. No personal data can be revealed inappropriately or unauthorized. We are very, very particular about it. ISS is an independent NGO that receives very minimal assistance by the state and must raise funds for its projects and its general operation. So far, in 2022, we have received by the state 1,500 euros. The cost of the preservation and support services is estimated to 12,000 euros. And towards this amount, we are appealing to you to contribute. We want to thank all those who have already responded to our media appeal, and we will address them individually. And I also want to thank the ladies who are with us today to enlighten us on the usefulness of this project. Linda and Mary are adoptees of those days with their own personal history of searching for their biological families. Gonda has done extensive research on the history of the adoptions and has written books and articles on the subject, among other books that she has written. And Katerina is a journalist who has recently received the first award for the best podcast at the International Film Festival of Thessaloniki. Her podcast, with the title Born Greek, deals with the journey of a Greek adoptee searching for her roots through archives, contacts, speculations, emotions, and truth. Gregory Kondos, who will be our moderator today, is a historian and founder of the Greek Ancestry and our collaborator in this project. Gregory and his team have already started the digitization, and so far they have digitized 850 case folders. We estimate we have about 3,000, but we still don't know. One of the reasons of digitizing is to see exactly what is happening in these drawers that we have. I can only thank Greg, for the interest and the love and care with which Gregory and his team treat this whole process. I also want to thank the members of the ISS board and the staff members of ISS that have embraced this project with enthusiasm. And I wish us to have an interesting and enjoyable webinar. Thank you for listening to me, and I give you back to Greg.
Thank you, Despina. Thank you very much for this introduction. We are going to start now with Linda Carroll-Trotter. Linda is a Greek-born adoptee who found her biological family 5 years ago in the mountain village of Stranoma in Nafpaktia. Her joy at reconnecting with her family and heritage inspired her to found the Ευτυχία Project, a nonprofit organization that assists and supports Greek adoptees searching for their roots and Greek families searching for their children lost to adoption. Linda, you're still mute. Unmute yourself.
Sorry, I'm technologically challenged, unfortunately. That's why I usually have my children around to help me. Thank you very much, Greg and Despina, for inviting me to speak today. It's a pleasure to be here. Up front, I will say quickly that I am in Washington, D.C. at a Greek Women's Conference, and so if I have to leave early from this presentation, I apologize in advance. As a Greek-born adoptee, the issue of digitization has long been a matter of concern among adoptees, and one for which the Ευτυχία Project has advocated for quite some time. It's vitally important that these records be preserved for all Greek-born adoptees, for they are often the only link we have to the truth of our Greek identity. And as all of us on this presentation can agree, knowing where we came from is a basic human right of all people.
Linda, I think we were not hearing you very well again.
Okay. I've got it turned up all the way. Give me, like, we fixed it before I left and came back in. So
if you just real quick, if you want to log out again, let's try what we did before. Yeah, real quick. Well, everybody, webinars and everything online comes with some challenges. We have to be patient. We have no other choice, really. So let's just give Linda a second to reconnect. She's in Washington, D.C. right now, attending a conference.
right, 3 p.m.
Yes, this is good.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm so sorry. I don't know what's wrong with this thing, but I've had this trouble with Zoom for the last couple of times I've done Zoom. All right, let me start over quickly, and I apologize. I appreciate you guys asking me to speak today. It's a pleasure to be here. And as I said, I'm at a Greek Women's Conference in Washington, D.C., and I may have to skip out a little bit early because of the activities of the conference. So I apologize. As a Greek-born adoptee, the issue of digitization has long been a concern of Greek-born adoptees about their records and has been one for which the Ευτυχία Project has advocated for quite some time. It's vitally important that these records be preserved for all Greek-born adoptees because they are often the only link that we have to the truth of our Greek identity. And as everyone on the panel today can agree, knowing where you came from is a basic human right of all humans. To give a little background, I was born in 1958 in the remote mountain village of Stralma na Factia, Ektos Gamo, out of marriage. My own nonna, my godmother, was bribed by my propapu, my great-grandfather, to get rid of me. And I eventually wound up in the Brefocomio Athenon, the Athens Municipal Nursery. I was adopted by wonderful American parents who lived in San Antonio, Texas at the time at 8 months of age, and I've had a wonderful life. For many years, I had no desire to find my Greek family, but then my parents passed away within 2 years of each other in 2015 and 2017. And as an only child, I felt extremely lost and alone and decided I would search. Like many of my fellow adoptees, I had very little information to go on when I began my search. Initially, I had an attestation from the orphanage that says my name was Efsihia. I was a foundling of unknown parents, that my parents, James and Ruth Forrest, had adopted me from the Brefocomio Athenon, and that was pretty much it. I had my baby Greek passport, which incidentally proves we're all Greek citizens. We left as Greek citizens with those passports, and hopefully we'll have another webinar one day about that subject, about our citizenship that should be restored to all of us. I had my airplane ticket from KLM. I had the dress I arrived in, which was about 3 sizes too big for me, and some photos of my first days in America, arriving and whatnot, and incredibly an 8mm film, a home movie of my arrival from Greece and being handed over to my parents. So that was kind of awesome that we actually have that, because I don't know of anyone else that has one. I'm sure there might be some others, but I've never heard of another adoptee that actually has a film. So I was very grateful to have that. And the only other thing I had was a story the Greek lawyer had told my parents, that I was a premature baby, that I weighed 4.5 pounds when I was born. My mother died in childbirth, and I went straight to the orphanage after I got out of the hospital. So that story, because I worked for many years as a registered nurse and I was a labor and delivery nurse, didn't start to really meet muster when I started to really think about it at the time when I started to search. So I made an application into the archives of the Brefocomio Athenon, and 6 weeks later received copies of my adoption file. I was shocked, to say the least, to find out that I was not a foundling of unknown parents, but a child named Efsihia, the daughter of a young unmarried woman from Stanoma. And a few weeks later, contact was made with the president of the village, who turned out to be a cousin of my mother's. A week after that, I had my first phone call with my biological family, and fortunately, someone in the village spoke English, because I knew absolutely zero Greek at the time. And then a week after that, my daughter and I were on a plane to Greece to meet them all. 37 trips to Greece later, I am obsessed and enamored and so proud of my Greek heritage and my family and learning the Greek language and the culture and, of course, the food. But without those records, had someone not taken the wherewithal to preserve those records, I might not have found my family for years. And while DNA is a very powerful tool, it's a fairly new concept to Greeks in Greece. They're kind of suspicious of DNA, and it's a little expensive for them in some cases. So I've even had people ask me, well, is the CIA going to get my information? So Greeks haven't done it. So in some cases, even if you do DNA and all you get is fourth and fifth cousins, that means that the people in your family that you knew to do DNA just haven't done it. And it may be months or years before they do. So these records this illustrates the need for our adoption records to be preserved, as does my own story, because my story changed drastically once I was able to get those records that had been preserved. In the case of the Brefocomio Athenon, our adoption records are housed at the General Archives of the State in Athens. And while they're not digitized yet, they are still, at least they're somewhat preserved because they are protected there. But what happens as the decades roll by and these fragile records deteriorate? Eventually, they'll all crumble to dust, and with that, any hope of finding that link to the clues to our identity, they'll be gone forever. So, as I understand it, there are 3,000 such records that the ISS has that they are struggling to preserve, and I hope that this is, and we applaud and support them in this effort to preserve these records and stepping forward to digitize these records and to give those adoptees adopted through the ISS the key to unlocking the secrets of their past. And it is the hope of the FTKIA project and of myself personally that the Greek government will somehow actually realize that this is an important thing, hopefully contribute something more to the ISS to help them in this quest, and to also take a cue from them to start preserving all the records of Greek adoptees, to digitize them all across all of the orphanages that the Greek state controls. And that's the only way with the preservation of our records that we lost children can come home and reclaim the birth and identity rights that belong to us. I would also like to just give a shout out to the ISS for their help and their support of Greek-born adoptees and their efforts in making sure that we get answers to our questions about our identity and about our adoptions and how they occurred and what actually happened in all of these instances. You know, for the past few years, the FTKIA project has had quite a few adoptees who came through the ISS ask us for help. And while we help them with getting their alien files and other things that we suggest they do, DNA and all of the things that you would normally think of right off the bat. We've also had them connect with the ISS directly so that they can find out what happened with their adoptions, because if the ISS has files, they have been extremely supportive with these adoptees to find their files, to give them copies of records, to actually help facilitate reunions of these adoptees with their biological families. And we have had several instances, even recently this summer, one of the social workers worked tirelessly with one of the adoptees that we had been helping to facilitate a reunion with her biological half-siblings in Athens this summer, which was an amazing thing. And so the ISS doesn't just keep records and collect records and preserve them. They also are really feeling wonderful people who help adoptees find those answers to their identity that they want. And I'm so proud of them for taking this initiative to start this digitization project. As I said, I hope that it will make the Greek government think about digitizing all of these records so all of our stories are preserved for not only ourselves, but for our future generations and our children, who our identity and our heritage is also theirs. And so I just want to applaud the ISS for this initiative and for preserving these stories. And thank you so much for inviting me to speak today. It's been my great pleasure to be here. And I know you're going to look forward to hearing my other colleagues on the panel speak too about this very important project.
Thank you very much, Linda. Thank you.
Thank you,
Finding
Linda.
the time to join us today.
I'm glad to. I'll hang out as long as I can. I may have to leave here in just a little bit, but I'll stick around as long as I can stick around.
Super. So before we move to our next speaker, let me quickly remind that if someone wants to donate, you will find all the donation information on the website of ISS Greece, in the YouTube comments thread, as well as on Greek Ancestry's and ISS Greece Facebook pages. So we've made it easy for you to support us, so please do. We are going now, we will continue with Mary Kardaras. Mary is an associate professor and chair of the Department of Communication at California State University, East Bay. She was adopted from Greece to the USA in the 1950s. And early in 2023, I think we are expecting the publication of a book which she has edited, titled Voices of the Lost Children of Greece, a collection of essays from Greek-born adoptees. So, Mary.
Thank you, Greg, and thank you for the plug for the book. It's being published by Anthem in the UK, and you will get people who buy it will certainly get a glimpse from and stories from 14 Greek-born adoptees who explain what their lives have been like, and I hope that you'll find that of interest. It is a real pleasure to be here this evening. I want to thank you, Greg, for all your work. as you have taken on the tedious and vital process of digitizing the records of adoptees. I want to thank the International Social Service for all it does, especially now in service to the Greek-born adoptees as we're aging. Time is of the essence as we search, always searching for more information about ourselves, including me. At 67 years old, my search is not over. I was born at the Athens Maternity Hospital in 1955, which has long since been torn down. And I was taken by my young mother 9 days later to the Vrefocomeion Athinon. I later became a PICPA baby. And in fact, I likely lived at PICPA here in Athens because I was ill with some pretty serious lung issues as an infant. From there, I was taken to a foster home, then traveled with my adoptive grandparents by ship to New York City, where I met my new parents, and then onward finally to Indiana to meet a huge new Greek-American family. I must say that I am grateful that I retained my culture to some degree. My language, I went to Greek school as a child, my church. Although I was baptized in Greece, we retained our connection to the Greek Orthodox Church and in the United States, which is so important to the Greek diaspora. Many of us, many adoptees did not have that luxury. And I realize now how important that connection has been for me. On and off, I searched for my biological family, but like many of us, did not dive into it fully until my adoptive parents died. My father died in 2000. My mother died in 2018, which was a profoundly, probably the saddest time of my life. Many people call it the second abandonment, and I certainly did feel that. But it's a familiar story that we do not want to hurt the ones who raised us and devoted their lives to us. So we wait, and I waited. Right now, I am fully engaged in the world of Greek adoptees, writing articles, writing books, speaking engagements, working with Katerina Bakoyani, one of my heroes in the journalism world, as we're advocating for two things: restored Greek citizenship for those who want it, and easy and open access to all our adoption records. I was not an ISS baby, but I must tell you that the ISS was instrumental in helping me find out what orphanage I was in, where my mother was, and how to get to her. My journey began writing to Mitera, the orphanage Mitera, where I was told that I was, and Mitera is a very, very nice, a nice orphanage, if orphanages can be nice, but it was a nicer one. And I think I was told I was there because it was a nice little movie, you know, that I was in a better place. The truth of the matter was I was not there. And Mitera was very kind about it, but sent me to the ISS, who actually began to kind of piece together my story. The ISS found out where my mother was and how to get to her. And the ISS did get to her and did speak to her, but in fact, she was not ready to meet, and in fact was traumatized again by my search for her. She was promised that she would never be bothered or found, and that's another story. But the ISS, probably better than any other agency, has kept meticulous records, files that are many pages long, and which are vital and testament to the lives of hundreds of us. When you are born to parents, and I mean not adopted, but spend your life with the parents you are born to, There is a recorded history of your life that comes from your parents, the people who knew you when you were born, your birth story. And they held a record of any health issues you may have had, what you were like as an infant, who was there, etc. What your little story was like as a baby. Adoptees often don't have that human connection unless and until they find biological kin. They have paper records of their lives stashed away in dusty archives. We have to search for those. In some cases, we have to beg for those because it's all we have. Why should anyone care beyond those who do know their histories? Because imagine if you didn't know. We all deserve to know the circumstances of our births and about our early lives, who we are, and from whom and exactly from where we come. These files that the ISS has hold much of that information. In my opinion, the ISS is a leader in digitizing the vital records of adoptees, and I applaud their efforts. The process will preserve those papers and will provide easier access to them, especially for those who cannot be in Greece to retrieve them. I can only hope that as they are preserved through digitization, that they are distributed by request of the adoptees. Our data, our personal information and files should not be kept from us any longer. I am a PICPA baby. Some of my papers have been transferred from the Athens Municipal Foundling Home to PICPA. But just last year, we discovered that there were some remaining documents still there. And what those documents held was something I thought I'd never have, which was the name of my father. It was an incredible moment for me. I've always had the name of my mother, but not my father. Also last year, thanks to my friend, Katerina Bakoyani, who's here with us tonight, we went to PICPA, presumably to see my file and hopefully to take my file. But in fact, I was not allowed to see it or take it. In fact, the social worker sat in front of us, Katerina, you remember, with my records, leafing through them and mediated what was contained in them. In fact, she told me that there was nothing of great importance in them. I was stunned and politely told her through Katerina that she was not allowed to tell me what was important to me and what was not. I did learn that my father's name appeared in many of the papers contained in that file, which leads me to believe that there may have been more of a relationship between my parents than I had previously thought. For adoptees, this kind of information, well, any kind of information, is of value and important. The point is, I could not take my file. I could not have copies of my file, and they remain old and tattered, a paper file in kind of a crumbling folder. I've requested them through proper channels and have gotten no response. Finally, I want to explain that in those files could be the medical histories of my parents, data about them, each of them, half of me, and data that is mine being kept from me, which is just not right. Quite by accident, several years ago, I discovered I had high blood pressure. It was very high blood pressure, dangerously high blood pressure that could have taken my life were it left undetected. I've since learned that there is heart disease on my mother's side of the family. In fact, my uncle and his son died prematurely, one of a heart attack, the other of a massive stroke. The point is that our records, our adoption files may hold information that is quite literally life and death. It is with this that I conclude to say that what the ISS is doing for us now is vital and important. Please, for those of you here this evening and for those of you, for those others you may know, make ISS a priority this holiday season by giving something, any amount, for this important process, the digitization of records that hold the precious details of our early lives. Thanks again for hosting this webinar and certainly for having me as a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you.
Some questions are being asked in the YouTube feed. I'm answering some of them on my own in the comments. So someone asked about BICPA. I gave them some information. Maybe at the end, if there is still things to be answered, we will have some time at the end, okay? We will now proceed with Gonda Vastain. Gonda is the Corais Chair and Director of the Center for Hellenic Studies at King's College in London. Her latest book, Adoption, Memory, and Cold War Greece, Quid Pro Quo, was published in 2019, and in 2021, it was also published in Greek with the title Ζητούνται παιδιά από την Ελλάδα. It's a fabulous book, definitely recommended. Gonda, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Gregory, and thank you, Despina. I'm very honored and very pleased to have the trust of both Gregory and the ISS to be with you today and to add another perspective, a complementary perspective to what has already been said. I've always been honored to have the trust of the ISS, including allowing me to visit the office, to see the files stacked in every single conceivable space in the office, and to let me leaf through a few of them just to get a sense. By contributing, which I hope you will do, you're actually giving back not just to the ISS, you're giving back a piece of the past to the adoptees, which is what is our common cause here. So I'm going to say a few words then, a few complementary words about the history and vision of the ISS, a few words about a typical file and what that archive has become, a few words as to why this is a breakthrough initiative taken by Gregory and the ISS, and then answering the question, what more remains to be done? Because it's important that we keep forward looking. So the ISS was established in 1924. For Greece, that means the ISS came in exactly at the high point, or the low point, of the Greek refugee crisis of Asia Minor, a period with intense social problems. Greece's population was all of a sudden augmented by 1/5 of its preceding population. So you can kind of see that an organization immediately had its work cut out for itself. This is an organization then that focuses on social work across national borders, and the crisis of the 1920s is such a case. International adoption would also be such a case of working among social workers across borders. So you can see why the ISS was in the forefront of international adoption in the 1950s. In the 1940s, actually, during the war, the ISS pulled out of Greece for a short while because it was just too dangerous and too difficult to get any work done. But as soon as things quieted down, already in 1953, they moved back in, opened an office in Athens, in Thessaloniki, and in Yanina, and start work on the international adoptions. They put the first children on a plane to America in September of 1955. So that tells you also that months of preparation have gone into that. And to their credit, already in September of 1955, they make sure that adoptions cost a nominal, symbolic amount of money, and no parents paid for the flights. They actually went fundraising for the flights of these babies so that it wouldn't come at a burden, as an extra burden on the adoptive parents or on the birth parents. So I find that actually remarkable in the spirit of the ISS from its very beginning in Greece. So in its vision then, the ISS wanted to do social work professionally, and most of the ISS workers were women. This was very much a female-dominated organization, and they want to come out as professional caseworkers, fully aware of the social science theories and practices of the time, and also clearly be perceived as professionals. And when you see these files, you will understand what I mean. This is professionalization of the profession of the social worker at the highest level. A typical file is 50 to 70 pages. Handwritten notes in Greek or in English get typed up and translated in both languages. So you can really see why this is a record, not of handwritten scribbles, but a professionally made file that has withstood the test of time when it comes to professional practices. So what you create then, when you have hundreds of these, if not a few thousands of these, you create an archive of the profession of social work and of adoption procedures, right? But you also create an archive of the emotions. As Gregory was saying, and as Despina confirmed, this is not just legal documents and observation reports and recommendation letters from the adoptive parents. It's also the adoptive parents' Christmas card with the little baby under the tree, sending wishes back to the ISS and telling them how well it's going and how special that first Christmas was with the new baby. This is children's drawings of what they remember, of what their new house looks like, of what their first encounter with snow looks like. But this is also hard stuff, like, for instance, reading between the lines of a young mother that she's actually a rape victim when she tells us that she quit her job as soon as her employer made advances, but there is a child. So what does that tell you? So this is drilling down to very difficult, sometimes very intimate family history preserved in these stacks and stacks of files. And then to know that every file, of course, represents a life. So this is then, when you put them all together, the archive of the social history of Greece, which is unique. There is nothing like it. And I'm going to emphasize that again. Why is there nothing like it? And now I move into the breakthrough initiative of the ISS. Well, for various reasons, now again related to political history, in 1989, Greece destroyed its anti-communist files. That means its observation files of communists or suspected communists were deliberately destroyed as a state initiative to build reconciliation. Why is that important? Because it means that up to 1989, with these files being destroyed in 1989, there is actually no bulk of files that lets us take a peek into family life on the side of the poorer people, people pushed into marginalization because of economic reasons, because of social taboos, or because of political conviction. So because these files, these political files now, were destroyed in 1989, that makes that the ISS adoption files are the only bulky ensemble of files that still stands and that can give us that look into Greece's social history up to 1989, which we otherwise wouldn't have. I find that hugely important. And actually, Gregory's advisor is the specialist on what happened in 1989 and archival policy. So not only are these files unique, but they also lead us not only in social history, but they breach us into other fields as well. They get us into labor history. Pregnant unwed mothers get dismissed from the job. They lead us into gender history. They lead us into migration history, diaspora history. They lead us into legal procedures. How is adoption being negotiated between two different legislations? So on all of this, the key lies in the ISS adoption files. But then, of course, I want to make a mark here by saying that access for the adoptees to their files is more important than anything else. And I'm going to add access also for the children of the adoptees. Because as I always say, if you're adopted, your child is adopted as well. So it's important that that access is in a way inherited in the same way that the adoption is inherited. And here the ISS is very different. We've mentioned it before, and I won't mince words about it. The PICPA procedures is more than a bit cumbersome. To this day, PICPA is probably the highest mountain to climb. And if anyone is listening, I want PICPA to take an example of what the ISS is doing. And in our meetings with the Ministry of Social Affairs, which have started to happen, we will remind them of the fact that they can handle, at PICPA, that they can handle their files and access to the files in a much more enlightened way and that the model is the ISS. We won't be shy about that. Mary has told you the horror story of what happened when she tried to get her PICPA file. And then there is even worse. There is the AHEPA, which didn't bother to keep a file or deliberately destroyed the files, and certainly has no commitment to make what little there is available to whoever that might be important. There's a very sophisticated term for this lack of care for the records, lack of care for the adoption files. I call it the dog ate your adoption file. That's kind of what we're looking at. So then what more is to be done? Well, it's simple. Gregory's work needs to be completed. He's been going at it since August. He needs to be paid. He puts an assistant in place. Let's be honest, no amount of money will ever cover all of Gregory's hours. His commitment is already there. His trust is there. His eye for what is important is there. Nobody cares for genealogy records like Gregory does. The match between the ISS and Gregory is a match made in heaven. Not even the former central office in Switzerland has taken any leading initiative to do what the ISS in Greece is doing. And it has also not happened at the ISS records in the US, which are held, the central office is in Baltimore, but the records are held in Minnesota. Why is it that both America and Switzerland have not made any progress? The answer is simple. They don't have a Gregory Condos. So we need the records. We need for each adoptee to be given their records. And it is with more records that they can make a stronger case for citizenship. As you've heard on several occasions, the two feed into one another. When you see a 70-page file of every observation of a child done in Greece, how could there possibly be any denying that this child started its life in Greece? Right? There may not be a birth certificate, it may be a foundling, but very few children who stayed in Greece of the 1950s will have anything comparable to a 70-page file, right? And they are considered Greek. So there is some restoring to do, there is some acknowledging to do, there is a breakthrough to be done on the basis of these files so that citizenship to the adoptees can be restored. And then, of course, as you well know, I'm not an adoptee, but I certainly keep the secrets of many adoptees. And here then, for my last bit, I want to put a plug-in for research. The ISS, when you first walk in, the ISS has a procedure in place whereby you pledge confidentiality. You're made aware of the fact that some documents contain names, that you're accessing confidential information. This is all very right and very justified. There has to be a policy on names. There has to be a policy on anonymity, while we also take care for the future preservation of the files. We will be looking at an issue, a challenge of not only digital storage of the capacity of this digitization project, which is huge, but we also need to think of a future place for the physical files to be preserved in the best possible climate conditions, access conditions. And I'm now thinking very long term. So I would welcome, for instance, an idea of forming an academic board with people who have archival experience. And I know that Despina has been talking to the General State Archives of how to go about securing the legacy, not only of this adoption record, but of this unique social history record of Greece for years to come. Because as you can imagine, there are a lot of researchers eyeing this collection. I'm certainly not the only one. There is PhD work to be done. There is documentary film work to be done. There is podcast work to be done. There is visual artwork to be done. And I would even suggest the idea of maybe celebrating the ISS's anniversary in 2024 with an exhibition of anonymized materials. Wouldn't that be nice? There are ways in which we can actually make a start on opening some of the records. And I want to put an idea out. For instance, somebody could describe what's in the records and publish an article in the archival journal of Greece, the Archaeotaxio, describing what all is there and eliciting further interest. Another option is, for instance, to take the files of deceased adoptees, which unfortunately are quite a few. A lot of people have already died, make them anonymous and present them in an exhibition as a tribute to the people, understanding the pain of the people who came too late, who will never have a chance to benefit from access. I think memorialization and digitization can go hand in hand here. In conclusion, then, I want to commend the ISS and Gregory for bringing the archive and the lived experience together. I think it's because face and paperwork can meet each other here that Greece can actually look its history in the eye. And I want to argue for Greece to come to grips with its history so that it may, together and with openness, lift a veil on its forgotten history and move forward progressively into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Gonda. Thank you for your very kind words. And for
the ideas as well.
Exactly. Great ideas. And I think that I agree that the ISS at some point could create some sort of an exhibition to honor this part of our history, which is to a great extent unknown, and all these people who are still, and some of them are not even looking at the ISS through the ISS, but they are looking, and we need to send this message that these records need to be preserved. And now we are moving on to our last speaker for today, Katerina Bakoyani. Katerina, she is a journalist and head of podcasts at Alter Ego Media. She recently won the first prize in the podcast competition at the Thessaloniki International Film Festival for her podcast Born Greek, based on the story of our friend Mary Kardaras. So, Katerina, the floor is yours.
Thank you for inviting me. Yes, based on the story of Mary Kardaras and with Honda von Steen right by my side as a consultant. She was also featured in the podcast. And the ISS was also mentioned there for helping Mary find her birth mother and trying to contact her. So I am the last speaker. I want to thank both Despina Economou and Gregory Contis for inviting me. And also to commend the initiative. I have been witness as a journalist. I've been at the offices. I've seen, like Honda, I've seen the files, and I am scared they will crumble to pieces if somebody doesn't do something very fast. I was amazed at the volume of files that need to be digitized. I have to give a picture. The office is very, very small. Any money given to the ISS will be directed just for that reason. I mean, you walk in other offices of non-governmental organizations, and you see. I mean, I'm not saying that. Maybe there's a reason for well preserved offices with nice furniture and many people, but that's not what you see in the ISS. All you see is work. I mean, cramped for space. I mean, they really need the money, guys, to do the work. Now, I am last speaker for a reason as well. I come very humbly to the adoption history of Greece. I come very humbly to the adoption history of Greece. First of all, because I didn't know about it, to be honest, and that is a testament to the secrecy the adoption history has been surrounded all these years. I am a journalist. I am 55 years old. I've lived in both countries, both Greece and America, for many years. Before I heard of the story, there were very few things that surprised me. And it's not only me that doesn't know this story. It's a story that came to the forefront almost, with a huge force, but it's only in recent years. I was told by somebody by accident who knew somebody who knew somebody who knew Honda van Steen. and that's how I came upon the story, and I was fascinated. And now I will do everything I can as a journalist. I'm not an advocate, and I'm not an adoptee, which is the second reason I come to the story very humbly. I can't imagine what it must be like to be an adoptee. Mary was kind and generous to take me with her on part of her trip to find her records. Now, I know about Greek bureaucracy. As a citizen, I've been, I've had to deal with it my whole life. So I wasn't expecting much. I'm not going to mince my words either. I wasn't expecting much when we went to PICPA. I went with Mary, not as a journalist. I went with Mary because that's not allowed. And I understand why it wouldn't be allowed. I mean, this is very, very confidential information. So I sort of went with Mary as a friend and as a translator. And but they knew I was there, and they knew I was a journalist. I didn't record for the podcast, but I was there. So it is records, but it's also people. Like I don't remember who said that. It is, we had the file in front of us, and Mary was not allowed to see it. And like she said, there was somebody else making decisions on what was important and what was not important. Now, again, I came late to the story, but I think everybody can understand that everything is important for an adoptee, and I can't, I can't understand why somebody can decide it for them. Now, I understand all about personal data and GDPR. That's we have to work with it as journalists. I am the first that would say no bending of the rules, but I'm sure there's ways around it. And I would also say that institutions should be working in the same way. So the example of ISS, like Honda said, is something that PICPA and other institutions must follow, but it shouldn't be left on their own accord, on what they want to say. I think it's, like GDPR is something that we all must abide with. I think that the handling of the records is something that, and in fact, it should have been done years ago. It's something that is regulated, not by any one institution or orphanage or government body. There should be laws about access to the records by the adoptees, and then by the researchers and by anyone else that has some legal interest to those records. So I would like to see a government initiative towards that direction, that there's rules, and the rules are there to help adoptees find the history, and then also, researchers and the rest of the world. I mean, this is a part of history. Now going full circle to the beginning of me not knowing, this is a part of history that both Greece and other countries should be aware of. It's also, of course, for medical reasons. I have Mary's voice in my head when she, and I found it very touching. She was talking about her mother to me, and I included part of it in the podcast. And she was saying, can you imagine what my mother must have felt like being 18 years old, 20 years old, alone, a woman in Greece at that time in 1955. Can you imagine what was going through her mind? Can we all imagine not knowing your origins. Can we all imagine, you know, Mary's putting herself in her mother's position, but can we for 1 minute put ourselves in an adoptee's position? Can you imagine not knowing who your parents are? Can you imagine? I can't. I can't. So anything in that direction, full access to the records, and easy and fast, I would say, because, you know, time is running out, and you know, why should bureaucracy be in the way? So again, thank you for inviting me. Another remark that I'm a bit hesitant in making, but I will. I don't know Gregory Kontos. I mean, Honda knows him and all his work, but I'm glad you're a man because this is the adoption history in Greece to me is very gender focused, in the sense that it was always the unwed mother that was, you know, traumatized, and the babies, and the men were the ones sort of, you know, it's not an issue, and you know, it's for women and a man, and to see, you know now it's a human issue, it's everybody's issue. So, you know, I didn't want to, you know, make you stand out as a man. I shouldn't be doing that, but I think it's important that more male and female, and, you know, any gender researchers are you know, taking care of history and the keeping of the records, and that everything is done right. So thank you.
Thank you, Katerina. Thank you, and for your comments. And yes, the gender comment. We're trying to get some things fixed here, right? So, yep, a man helping preserve this archive. This archive being preserved against this general tendency towards silence and you know, forgetting. A couple of comments. As you said, time is passing, and this is exactly why the ISS decided to prioritize the earlier adoption files over the more recent ones. So the idea is, let's digitize whatever could concern people who are aging right now, so that we can give them access to these records before it's too late. Regarding the magnitude of the collection, Gonda mentioned before the average file includes about 60 to 70 pages. This is the average. There are files that include up to 250 pages, which is crazy. It's crazy, but you can understand the variety and the amount of the information included in these records. And then a comment from me before allowing Despina to close this webinar. Right now in Greece, we are in the middle of a scandal regarding organizations supposed to help children. And the ISS, it's good to know what is going wrong here, but it's also good to emphasize what is good. And the ISS is doing really good work. The ladies at the office, they are in contact with people interested in adopting children every day. They are really, really serious in what they do. We are there every day because we digitize, and we see them. The other day they had this little kid, and the office celebrated, right? So they really care. They really care. And what Katerina said before, the ISS is not like, this luxurious office or anything like that. All the funding will go to the preservation of this archive and to the advancement of the ISS services. So it's really not a waste of money. Not a single dollar, euro, whatever will be wasted. This is what I had to say. And now, Despina, if you want to make some last remarks.
Thank you very much. I'm really touched tonight. It's evening here. I thank you so much, all of you, for saying all these good words, which are not just words, it is the truth about the organization. I'm relatively new in this system, although it was the first job that was offered to me in the 80s when I came from UK. And but I decided to take the job at UNHCR, you know. But however, I want to mention the director that was there for 35 years or more, Chrysoula Kodoyanis, that was director for many, many years, extremely capable and extremely good-hearted person and professional. And she needs to take the credit, you know, for preserving also the archive. I don't know, there are so many things I want to say. I want to thank the personal stories, Linda and Mary. And Mary, thank you for the stories also for the book. And Gonda, I don't know what to say. You said it all. You put the context, the history, the personal stories, everything. Thank you for the ideas. They are very, very good ideas. We are going to pursue some of them as soon as we have some kind of funding and people, you know, we even need volunteers to help us in pursuing certain things. Thank you very, very much. And thank you, Greg, for spying on us and seeing what we are doing in the office. But yes, it is a very, very nice experience. And Sophia and Maro, the colleagues of Greg, that they are there with us every day. You know, especially the first days, they were so emotional as well, jumping, you know, with a photograph. Look how cute is this baby, or even having tears, you know. I mean, this woman was raped, you know. Now it seems they are a little bit, you know, they are used to the stories that they see, but the first days it was very, very touching. And for all of us, it is an experience that we live it as a group in that small office we have. It's not possible not to be, you know, on each other's foot. And it is a very, very rewarding and exciting experience. So thank you very much. I hope we will be able to raise the funds that we need to conclude. We will not stop. We will continue the efforts. And thank you very, very, very much, and good luck, and have a nice festive season, all of you and all of us. Enjoy with our families, the adopted and the biological, and the families of our hearts, you know, the friends that we have around us. So take care, all of you. Thank you very, very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Καλές γιορτές.
Καλές γιορτές.
Καλές γιορτές.
Καλές γιορτές. Γεια σε όλους.
Γεια σας.